Yeah, happy to be here. Where are you
Awesome.
located?
We're in San Diego.
Oh, nice.
Where are you?
In Chicago.
Chicago. I did
Yeah.
see okay. Are you originally from there?
No, I'm from Iowa originally, but
Okay.
I've
I
been
did see on
based.
your profile that you like New York style pizza more. That's why I was confused by it
Oops.
being in Chicago.
True.
Hey,
Very
same
much so.
same here, same here. But my wife's dad, my father-in-law is from Chicago, and I know she
Oh,
likes
cool.
the deep dish pizza.
Awesome. And I like
Yes.
seeing your turntable in the background. That is
Oh,
beautiful
awesome.
thing.
Yeah. But so you're from Iowa? You said Des Moines, Iowa?
Yeah, I'm from Iowa originally.
Tell me about that a little bit.
So I grew up in the Midwest and played in bands in high school, and then went off to college at Kenyon College in Ohio, and met up with a group of musicians and started a band there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've kind of been all over the Midwest. I lived in Minneapolis for 5 years with that band,
Oh, wow.
and then I worked as a preschool teacher right when I got there as my day job,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I started writing songs for kids. But the band played
Wow.
together for 5 years, and then I came to Chicago to go to graduate school in something completely different. But I made a kids record, and that was in 1997, so a long time ago.
And
But then it turned
took
into
off
this.
from there.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
exactly.
So what was the first instrument you learned to play?
The first instrument was let me think about this, the piano. And I
Okay.
also like sang in community choruses and things like that.
Wow. Was that really early on?
Yeah, when I was, just like, 7 or 8, probably around that time. And
Mm-hmm.
then, the first introduction to like being in a rock band was because people knew that I sang in these various community choirs and things like that. I got
Mm-hmm.
asked to sing in a rock band in junior high, and we played classic rock and all that kind of stuff.
That's cool. And
Yeah.
then in high school, you said you're in a band in high school too?
Yeah, and so in high school, in the first band that I was in, one of the guitarists taught me how to play guitar, just loaned me a guitar and showed me a few chords. And in high school, thanks to REM, I got into like Murmur and Reckoning. I really liked that sort of jangly rock music with mumbled lyrics, which was very convenient for your first songwriting, to write songs where you don't have to worry about the lyrics too much. You can mumble things. So I started a band in high school that was all original music with 2 other guys, Ken Smith and Dave Williams. And we made, at the time, this was a long time ago, so we made cassettes. But we
Okay.
went to the studios and recorded these songs and sold our cassettes, and we would play. There was a lot of kind of impromptu punk rock shows in Des Moines in the 80s.
Okay.
And so we would play with all these other punk bands at various fundraisers and church basements and all these kind of strange locations where you end up playing in bands at that age. Super
For
fun.
sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. And then did music take you to school in Ohio?
No, I went to Kenyon, and I was a philosophy of religion major.
Oh, interesting.
I did, I played in a band the whole time I was there, and I did also, I took a music theory class or two, but for the most part, my studies were in that area. And then the band, we decided we all wanted to keep playing together, and so we moved to Minneapolis as a group in the early 90s. And I was just looking for a way to make a living, and I'd had a little experience working at a co-op preschool at the college, just very briefly, but I found 4-year-olds really fascinating and funny and honest and hilarious. And
I have a 4-year-old. That's amazing.
yeah, it's great. But so I just sort of thought, it might be fun to be a preschool teacher. I thought it also would be rewarding, and it turned out to be really rewarding and really, really exhausting, especially trying to play shows at clubs, late at night on weeknights because you're a new band and you're not getting weekends.
Sure.
And then waking up and trying to be present for 4-year-olds. But at the same time, it turned into this, I got there and they knew that I was a musician at the preschool, and they were like, oh, do you want to do music with the kids? And so I first, played Itsy Bitsy Spider and things like that. But eventually I started playing like Sam Cooke, Cupid, or the Ramones, or anything I could think of where lyrically it wasn't totally inappropriate.
Sure.
Like even like traditional Irish songs and all this other stuff. And the kids really responded to everything. And so I ended up playing a song that I'd played in with my band that is a song that happens to have animals in it. And so I knew that might have some interest to a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a song that is 4 verses with no chorus and no repeated lyrics and none of the things you normally think you have to have for a kid's song, just repetition and simplicity.
Sure.
Instead, it was a long story. And the kids like kept requesting it every day. And eventually they learned all the lyrics and performed it at an open house. And I was like, you can kind of do anything you want for kids and they're going to take it in and they're going to like some things and they're not going to like some things. And it just opened up the door to me understanding what I could do in kids' music.
That's awesome. So it was an original song for your other band that kind of got it rolling for you.
Yeah. And it's the song's called Giraffe Nightingale. And I wrote it, when I was like 18 and, I'd written it for adults, mainly. I wasn't thinking it was a kid's song, but then they loved it. And I ended up putting it on my second record later on, re-recording it.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, you said that opened the door. So you soon realized that kids are responding to your songs.
Yep.
And then, so you started, did you write a whole kids record and try to play in front of your students? Like how did you get going?
The strange thing about it, I wrote, a good handful of songs at the school. And then I came to the point where I was thinking this isn't really working to do these 2 careers at the same time. And I ended up starting to temp and ended up getting into IT and working in a totally different field for my day job. Mm-hmm. But as I was doing that, I just kept writing kid songs, like really for no apparent reason. I was not planning to be a kid's musician or make a kid's album, but I would be sitting at home and I'd write a song about my cat or something, like whatever it was. And eventually, as the band was breaking up and I was getting ready to go to graduate school at University of Chicago, I had these songs and my friend, Liam Davis, who's a friend from college and lives in Chicago and is also a producer, said, hey, we should just go into the studio for a couple of days and record these songs, quickly and make a little record and do it before you go to grad school. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So we recorded 13 songs in 2 days and mixed them, which is crazy. Like it was all live. Him and me in the studio primarily and a few overdubs, very folky and simple. And, I made the record and I ordered copies and I moved to Chicago for graduate school. And this was pre-internet stuff. So, there was a address for a PO box on the back of the CD basically. And I started getting orders, not only from friends, but just from random people. I didn't even know who they were. And it got written up in, at the time, Sesame Street Parents Magazine. I didn't have a publicist or anything. I was just going to graduate school with CDs in my closet, and I played a little bit around Chicago around that time, including at the University of Chicago. And people were like, when are you going to make another record? And, I had professors with kids coming to my little shows in Hyde Park, and they weren't coming to hear me give a lecture. So I thought, maybe I should be doing this instead of that. So I finished the master's degree and then really pursued it full time after that.
Wow. So that first record, you don't know how it landed in the hands of, like you said, Sesame Street?
I don't, because I didn't push it anywhere. I mean, it was, friends of friends, and a lot of people, it was very much people passing on to other people. And when I would get orders in my PO box, it would be for like 5 copies. So people were clearly just giving it out as gifts. And I think it just kind of circulated very naturally. And so, when I decided to do it full time and make another record, that was when I sort of, started thinking, okay, I got to book my own tours and I have to figure out how to turn this into some kind of a career where I can not work a second job, but try to be a musician full time. Mm-hmm. And that was, I recorded my second album in 2000. And that was around the same time that, well, even before that, Laurie Berkner in New York would put out a record in 97, around the same time I put out Great Big Sun. And Dan Zanes from the Del Fuegos started putting out kids records, and in Chicago, Ralph Covert as well. And so there were a lot of people to just sort of call upon and be like, hey, how should we make this work? In Chicago, there's a couple of venues that are rock clubs at night that are doing kid shows at 11 a.m. where they try to clean the floors enough for adults to be in there.
Sure.
And, you know, I would tell people about that. And then, you know, I'd talk to Dan Zanes and he'd be like, hey, there's a Goodwill in Cambridge that does funk shows in their basement. And I'm sure they do a kid show. You should call this guy. And so I would set up a tour at, you know, Borders Books at the time. And, you know, this Goodwill and a few other things, and just go by myself, traveling out to play a handful of shows that I would set up. And,
Wow.
you know, selling merchandise at the shows and then going back and booking more. You know, in the beginning, it was just me doing it alone.
Uh-huh.
And then we started getting better gigs, and I started playing more with Liam, who's the producer, and then eventually with a full band. But, you know, eventually I got to get a booking agent and all these other things, distribution and all that stuff. But at first it was literally just me doing it.
Wow.
Which I'd had experience, you know, because I was in a band before and we did the same thing. We would set up tours and travel around the Midwest and play concerts and try to make it work, you know, traveling and paying for everything and getting back with some money at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was kind of just a very natural progression to doing more and more touring, and eventually with a full band, which is when it for me got really fun.
Wow. When did you get the full band? Like, how many years had you been playing at that point?
You know, it started happening maybe in 2003 and 4. And when that started happening, then I started writing more for the full band.
Mm-hmm.
The first few records are pretty folky and pretty much acoustic guitar based.
Mm-hmm.
They still have little punk rock songs and things like that. But when I really started playing with a group of musicians that I really loved and respected, I started thinking more about writing for bands. And, you know, I like, you know, a lot of power pop and things like that. So I was able to write with all these different vocal harmonies and different instruments, and we could perform it live, and, you know, just great ideas from other band members and all that stuff. So I would write with them in mind, and that really transformed the records into big power pop records around the time that I put out Meltdown in 2005 and Popfly and Jungle Gym. Those 3 in a row were kind of big pop records.
Did you see when you got the band, did you see, like, when did you start seeing real growth in the audience, and like, were you able to get outside of Chicago?
Yeah, so that was probably probably around that time, 2004 and 5. In 2005, we ended up getting on the Today Show.
Wow.
And playing in Rockefeller Plaza. It was totally insane.
Talk to me about that. That is crazy.
Yeah, so that happened because Putumayo, the world music label, do you know that label that does compilations?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
They were doing kids compilations as well that weren't necessarily global music kind of stuff. Some of it was, but they ended up using a song of mine from a record I made in 2004, Way Out. The song is called Roller and the Coaster. And it was it's kind of a meditative, softer song. It's not the kind of song that would end up getting played on the Today Show, but that compilation and that group got some interest from the Today Show to have one of the artists on the compilation on. And then they ended up choosing my song Meltdown, which is much more of a big punk rock song. And, you know, silly thing. But so the band was on the Today Show in 2005, and that, you know, really blew things up.
Sure.
In every way. Yeah.
Wow. How was that? Pretty intimidating going out there and playing?
It was, but it's amazing to be on something like that where they do this every day. Like I find this anytime I do any kind of live television, but especially that. Everyone there, they're just all such pros, and they're all seemingly so relaxed in that setting where it's like the craziest feeling. But you have so many people around you, all the crew and the folks that make everything happen, that you feel comfortable yourself as much as you can. You know, I look at it afterwards and I'm like, the camera works amazing. Like the sound is amazing. Like it looked and sounded great. And like, it was these, you know, it seems like the kind of thing where you planned it out really well, but it was really just us showing up, setting up, and they said, go for it. And then they just know how to do it. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
that was incredible.
That is amazing. And I did see that you've won a bunch of awards, Parenting Publications Awards, Parents' Choice Awards. When did those nominations and those things start happening for you?
Those started happening with the second recording, Yellow Bus,
Mm-hmm.
which like the Parents' Choice Gold Award,
Mm-hmm.
that got that. But that also with Yellow Bus, one of the things that I changed about what I was doing is I contacted a lot of people in the field that I found at the time. That was early internet. Sorry.
No worries.
That was early internet time. So I was like searching for like other kids musicians who had been doing kids music. Of course, I knew of Rafi and various people from working at the preschool,
Mm-hmm.
but I started looking into other people who made kids records, and I found folks like Dan Crow out in California who had been on Sony for a while, and several other people. And I just reached out to them as well and said, "Hey, I'm going to make another kids record, and I want to do it right. What are some things I should do?" And the first thing out of everyone's mouth was hire a publicist. So
Oh, wow.
that's what I did. They're just like, don't, hire a publicist because they'll help a lot. And that certainly was true. That even though I didn't have one for the first record, and things naturally happened, and I do think a lot of my career is thanks to people just passing the music on and sharing it with others. Hiring a publicist is a great way to get more, especially if you're doing your own little setup tours, to get press that people can find out about you and maybe come out and check it out. And that is pretty key.
Did you tour just as like yourself or with the band, or did you ever do like you and a couple other kids musicians on a bill?
At the time, it was just me. Early on, it was just me alone, because Liam, who's my producer at the time, was playing in a band called Frisbee that were a power pop band for grown-ups, and they were doing quite well and touring themselves, and so he was really busy. But in between his tours, he would come with me sometimes. So it'd be the two of us, and he would. He had to stop doing this because it was physically not a good idea. But he was playing keyboard bass lines with one hand and a drum between his legs and a tambourine on his foot, and like playing the bass lines and the drum parts at the same time. So we would try to do songs that were meant for a 5-piece band with 2 people.
That's crazy.
And it was cool. It was a workout for him every time.
For sure.
Yeah, but then eventually, at some point, we played at a book festival in Chicago, and it was sponsored by Target, and they really liked what we were doing, and they were doing book festivals all over the country. So they started inviting us on those book festivals, and that was where we could bring a 5-piece band to Los Angeles or New York or any of these places. And that, was also a huge thing. And on those bills, it was a lot of different artists. And at the time, They Might Be Giants started making kids records. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And I was a huge fan of them in high school.
I love that band.
I
still
forgot
love that they did that.
Yeah. So that was a thrill for me. I was like, somebody that I loved and listened to a lot was making really smart and cool kids music. So they would be on these bills, as well as, like I mentioned before, Ralph's World and Dan Zanes and a whole bunch of other folks. And also, there were book festivals, so there were authors and that sort of thing as well. But that was a big, national kind of exposure, was getting to work with them.
With them. Yeah, that's crazy. It's interesting how certain bands did that. Well, they kind of broke off and then made their own, like started kids records. I know the Verve Pipe did that.
Yeah, and that's another group that we played with a bunch, and super nice guys and super talented.
It's so funny to see that. I mean, I love to see that,
Yeah.
or they're that talented. You guys are that talented where you can write, a song like The Freshman and it's this major hit, and then write a bunch of kids records.
Yeah, with tons of heart, like the Verve
Right.
Pipe. That record, that's got just some beautiful songs on it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then years down the line, if you get nominated for a Grammy, that must have been a ridiculous moment.
Yeah, so that was I can't remember the year now, but that was my 7th album, which was called Jungle Gym, and it was another big pop record. And that was amazing and incredible experience. to get to go with the whole band to Los Angeles and go to the Grammys was very surreal.
Do you remember getting like, how did they let you know that? Did your publicist say, "Hey, you're up for a Grammy," or like, how did that work?
Well, I think my bass player, Jacqueline Schimmel, who's been playing with me forever and is such an amazing bass player and an amazing person, but she is so meticulous and on top of everything that I don't think I've ever, like, anything that happens, like, she knows about it before I do. And so I think I probably got a text from Jackie. I'm not positive, but I probably was doing something else entirely. And she told me, so.
Wow. And then that happens 4 times, right?
Yeah. So it's happened. For what was the second one? Recess and Lemonade, and then now Wildlife. It's been an exciting road. And I mean, the thing about that is just recognize what you do. And sometimes that comes in the form of Grammys, but other times it just comes in the form of somebody, sending me a note and telling me how much they love a certain song on a record and how much it means to them. And that could be, coming from a peer or, coming from a 4-year-old, and having it be something that you would never expect a kid to even like, which oftentimes when I'm making kids records, I'm writing songs that mean something to me and trying to express something that's going on in my inner world in the form of a metaphor of a kid's life, and knowing that they resonate either with kids or with adults is what is the greatest feeling of all, I think.
Sure. Was it in the beginning, was it difficult to transfer from what you were doing in the band in Minneapolis to then now you're playing a gig at 11 o'clock in the afternoon? Like, was that?
Yeah, it was. But a lot of times I would have guest musicians play shows, bigger shows in Chicago or something. If we were playing at the Old Town School of Folk Music or Ravinia or something, I would have a whole horn section or add a musician to the group. And like, I think without fail, no matter who the person is, like seasoned veteran musician who's played with a million bands comes and plays with us one time, without fail, everyone afterwards is like, that's one of the most fun gigs I've ever played in my life. Like, kids are such a blast. And anytime you want to do it again, let me know. And that was how my trumpet player ended up joining the band initially. Was I hired him for one show, and he played also in kind of really amazing, weird indie bands in Chicago. And he played one show and just was like, I love this. This is so much fun. And he ended up building these giant shoes for the show and like walking around in these giant tennis shoes that are as big as your head. And just, everyone just brings a lot in the band that I play with to the performances. And I'm so lucky to have them, because not only are they all great musicians who play with a lot of different groups, but we have puppets in the band, and all of them have different characters, and they are hilarious, and it's all improvised, and they're just natural at it. And it's funny to us. I mean, I think it's often funny to the audience too, but it's just one of those things where, as we go along, we just kind of transform the show and just try to bring new elements to it. And everyone in the band has such great ideas and great input. And that's one of the things about the pandemic that's so sad, is just missing out on performing with those people.
Yeah. My next question was going to ask you, how do you keep the kids entertained? But it sounds like you have puppets and, all these things happening. Did you, in the beginning, were like, I mean, I have a 4-year-old. I don't know how long his attention span would be. I mean, at a 30-minute show, I've taken him to a couple kid things, and he was really into it the whole time. But was it hard at first if it's just you on a guitar playing songs to keep the kids focused?
I clearly remember the first gig I ever played, and it was at a Barnes and Noble in Minneapolis after I'd made the record, but before I'd moved. And, I'd worked in a preschool, so I knew a little bit about keeping kids engaged, but
sure.
I tried to play a bunch of the songs off the record. And when there wasn't any interactivity happening, kids were just wandering off into the bookstore.
Right.
I was like, okay, I've got to figure out a way around that. So, I mean, a lot of it is keeping the audience engaged and making the audience part of the show. And so having, hand movements and shouts and various things that bring them back, and watching the audience and changing your set list according to what you see going on. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I think I could pull off a softer song right now. The audience is kind of with me. Let's try it. And even then, it's a kid's audience, so it's not going to be the most attentive, singer-songwriter crowd you've ever had in your life.
Sure.
But there are other times you're like, okay, I've got to get these kids off the floor moving. They're crazy, so let's do like a really fast song where they can jump around. So, that's a lot of the job. And I think, I write these songs and I write them, trying to have them have a lot of heart and a lot of fun and all these other things. But after I write them, then comes the process of how do I make these work live? Like sometimes there are things in the song where I'm like, okay, there's some counting in this song, but sometimes I'm not even sure how it's going to work live. Like one of my more popular songs from my earlier record is Willie Was a Whale. Mm-hmm. And the first time I played that, lost the audience entirely. And then I think it was Liam who said, we should have them make W's and do do this when we're talking about being tough. And so we had this whole thing where it's a back and forth sort of shouting thing in the chorus. And once I did that song just, got requested a million times, and I still play it all the time because I think that interactivity is what, really grabs kids' audiences.
For sure. And you have to I'm sure you have to be able to change your set list, like kind of on a dime, right? Like, whereas if you're losing them, you're like, okay, I got to play that one now to kind of grab them back. Like, do you get that type of?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it sort of drives my band somewhat crazy because we'll be playing with a 5-piece band somewhere and, they will have prepared these songs and we've, rehearsed some in the sound check to get everything down. And then I'll just be like, can you guys do this one? And Dave will look at me like, oh my gosh, I haven't played that forever. Cause whatever, we have 150 songs or something.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I try not to do it too much, but like, there are times where I'm just like, we need this song and we haven't practiced it, but let's just try it.
Mm-hmm. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up how, the pandemic, you can't be around these people anymore. Aside from that, like, how did it affect you? Were you recording Wildlife at the time? Like what was going on when it all shut down for you?
Yeah. So I had, finished recording Wildlife at the end of 2019, and it actually came out in February 21st or something like that.
So right before.
And we had actually, we'd played some show. We played a Old Town School of Folk Music CD release show. We had been out to Denver, which this is strange to think of now, but I think it was March 7th or something like that. We played at a performing arts center in Denver with the whole band, and during that time, it was kind of like that was when, people were aware of it, but it was also like, we're not really sure what the effect is. There were a few cases, I think.
Yeah.
But boy, when we came home from that was when everything shut down. And
wow.
I just remember like, this is sort of a strange thing to share, but I think it's funny. I remember being in the airport and thinking, wow, men are actually washing their hands more than they normally do.
Oh, that's so funny. That is funny.
And I'm always disturbed by that, whenever I'm washing my hands. But like, I was like, wow, it's different. So there's something bad.
I saw that so much. You work in an office and it's like, all right, dude, you're not going to wash your hands?
Exactly.
Good thing I used the dryer or the towel to use the knob. And then
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I would do before this. Like I did.
Right, exactly. And it's like, it's so funny.
But so that was my sign that things were taking a bad turn. And so, after that happened, of course, I mean, my booking agent was really kind of knew what was going on, and I kept being like, oh no, I'm sure it'll, whatever, maybe a few gigs will get canceled or something. But wow, then it was just like your entire calendar gets wiped out. And we had just a bunch of amazing shows that we were really looking forward to. And then a few things, there was a lot of, there's been a lot of things that have been really helpful. And, there were venues that did turn them into virtual events and allowed me to do, strange things with green screen. I learned a lot about using cameras and green screens and everything else to try to make stuff as fun as you can when you're sitting in your basement.
Sure,
to play music by yourself that you would rather be playing with 5 other people or more.
So you have to like adapt your show to do that, to the
Yep.
live streams. And it must be different for a children's musician when it comes to those things, because you probably have to set up more of like obviously a show.
Yep.
And then you really have to like get the word out, because where it's like some of these artists that can just go, okay, I'm going to go live on my Instagram, play 3 songs real quick. And then most of the people will be like, oh, I'll check that out for a second. Whereas with kids songs, kids aren't on their phones on Instagram. That your fan base isn't on Instagram scrolling through, or Facebook or whatever. Like, how was it a lot more promotion and promoting? Like, how did you get the live streams to start working for you?
Well, initially I wasn't really thinking too much about, I don't know, replacing gigs or anything. I was just thinking like, wow, everyone is going to be stuck at home with their kids, and I don't really want them watching screens. Like, that's my thing. Like,
screen time.
So, like I don't really want to be the person making you watch a screen. So I was trying to think of like, how do I like contribute to giving people something that they might need and want, and not just having them sit in front of a screen. And so, I mean, I ended up streaming, I think in the beginning I was streaming 5 days a week.
Wow.
And then I turned it into 3 days a week and eventually 1 day a week. But what I started doing is I made this webpage called Stuck at Home that was on my site, where I put up a bunch of activities that people could do off screen, including like making instruments out of trash, like shakers and guitars out of boxes and things like that, with instructions and all that. And then I started teaching little lessons on my stream of how to play certain songs on ukulele or guitar and showing the chords. And then I would print them with the help of my wife, who's a cellist and an actual musician. We'd get the sheet music, so there would be chords and melody lines. And then I would get amazing videos of like a mom and son playing Willie Was a Whale on clarinet and ukulele or something.
Oh, wow.
So I tried to come up with all these activities people could do offline. Obviously I'd be streaming and I'd play some requests and things like that. But I also had this thing that was super fun, which was a musical scavenger hunt, where and I did this on Instagram too, but I would pick 4 records of just songs that I like, not kids songs at all, or just great music that isn't inappropriate. And I would come up with questions about something that happens in the lyrics that they'd have to answer the question by making a drawing of that answer. And so I had kids listening to like, whatever, Marvin Gaye and, I don't know, the Replacements or whatever it was.
That's awesome.
And then they would have a question. And one of my favorites was I did Bob Dylan's 25th Dream, or I can't remember the name of the song right now, but it's like a 12-minute Bob Dylan, just going off.
Of course. Yeah.
And I picked something out of like the 8th verse that they had to figure out. But there weren't tons of people that did it, but people did it. And like, it was a great activity. And like, also they were like, oh, I'd never heard of, this artist or that artist. And so they, got turned on to new music and that's always fun to do. So
that's really cool.
Just try
Replacements. That's a good one.
Yeah. But it was fun. And then I also started doing these really weird cooking videos, that was me making things that, teaching you how to make stuff. But I had a lot of fun. I don't know if you know Jacques Tati, the French filmmaker. He makes these comedies, but anyway, like very influenced by him. I would film it all and then overdub all of the dialogue and all of the sound effects. So if I was like cracking pepper, it would be like shattering glass. And like all these crazy like things that it just makes it funnier. If I'm just dropping something on the cutting board, it just makes a thud. And so I made these cooking with Justin videos that are recipes that I really like and that people can, actually cook the things, but they were super silly and weird and funny stories and all this stuff. So
that's cool.
During my stream, I would show these cooking videos and then people would cook the recipes and send pictures of the cooking. So like, I just tried to do a lot of things where people were able to spend time with they're going to obviously spend time with their families anyway, because of the pandemic. Might as well like have creative ways of people spending time together.
That's amazing. Those are very creative. Yeah.
But then people went back to school and so I did it for a while longer, and I had a very small group of people that were watching me once a week. but I ultimately decided to sort of turn it into random streaming events going forward, so I can concentrate on more songwriting and other things, because it took up all of my time. And we have a 2-year-old, and my wife and I are trying to juggle that as well. And she has her own career as a cellist, which was turning into her doing her own strange virtual events. So we decided this was better than not be constantly streaming every day. But
that's cool though. Those are really creative ways to keep people engaged. I like that, especially sending you back stuff like, oh, here's the food I made, or here's the drawing of the Bob Dylan song, or whatever.
Well, that also makes me know that it's such an empty feeling to be streaming.
Is anyone taking this in?
Does anyone care that I'm doing it? And you get comments or a few things, but like literally getting like beautiful drawings from people, and just like, oh, we ended up buying this record because we love the song that you shared with us and didn't know about it, or any of this stuff. We cooked this for our dinner tonight. Like, it's cool. Like it feels great to be part of people's lives and just know that you're providing some relief, because we're all feeling the same way. And like,
sure,
I can use some relief too. And it's great relief when I see happy things happening in the world outside my little house.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to go back to Wildlife real quick for a second.
Sure.
So that's the most recent record, and this is also up for. Is it up for a Grammy? Because it's up for 2021 Grammy, right?
It is up for a Grammy, and it was. It's a record that I was not planning on making, and I think like songwriters can probably relate to this. That I always have really like. I have intentions of what I want to do as a songwriter. Like, I think I'm going to make this kind of a record, and it never turns out that way, because you can't really control what's going to come out and what you're going to end up writing about. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to make a big rock record with my band, because I'd previously made a record called Lemonade, which was recorded live in the studio, all acoustic instruments. And it had my drummer Gerald Dowd playing on most of it, playing on like paint cans and things like that. And Robbie Fulks, who's an amazing singer-songwriter from Chicago, was playing, and an incredible guitarist, was playing acoustic guitar on the whole thing, and John Abbey playing upright bass. But we did this thing where it was all of us in a room playing the songs live, singing live. And I wanted to do something that was more like a full rock band record with my band. And we recently found out that my wife was pregnant, and I was like, okay, I got to write this record while I have time, record it. And I'm going to make, this full band record that will be perfect for touring and all of these other things. And I sat down to write, and having just found out that my wife was pregnant, I just started, what the first words that came out of my mouth was this song that's called When You First Let Go, which is, sort of a song for my own mom. And it starts off with the first thing I remember, I was moving back and forth in time with you. And it's this image of a kid on a swing. And it's it's not like anything else I'd ever written. And it's not intentionally for children, although it's comforting. And I thought to myself, well, I'll play this for my wife, but I'm never going to put this out. And she was like, this is so beautiful. You got to do it. And then I just kept writing these songs, and I was not wanting to necessarily, but I just ended up writing this whole record about becoming a dad, and also reflecting on my own childhood, and just sort of the sort of lullaby-ish comfort style of kids music that is part of the genre, I think. Mm-hmm. But I ended up making this record that I didn't really want to make, and it took a lot of convincing from my wife and my producer Liam that we should actually make the record. And we went into the studio, and my wife plays cello on the whole thing. Most of the songs are viola da gamba, and Liam, the producer, his idea was to have us sitting across from each other in the studio and doing all the basic tracks live, mm-hmm. like facing each other, which was really intense.
Oh, that's cool.
Like,
yeah.
It's a song about our child and all these other things. And, so we did that. And then we brought in some other amazing musicians, Lisa Kaplan from Eighth Blackbird. That's an incredible new music group, played piano on it. And one of my favorite singers, Nora O'Connor, who sings with Flat Five in Chicago, and the Decemberists and a bunch of other groups.
Oh, wow.
She sang on Decemberists. Oh yeah, they're amazing, and she sings on a few of their records. And you should check out the Flat Five if you don't know them, because
I don't. I'm going to check them out.
it's
After
her
this.
and Kelly Hogan, who's another amazing singer, and it's the group. They're so incredible. I mean, I love their stuff. But anyway, so we brought in, just various people and certain instruments that I would write for. We got Justin Peters, who also works with Eighth Blackbird, to play marimba, and anyway, put together this record and thought to myself, I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't know what anyone would think of it, because it was like nothing else I'd done. And it was not, I'd made a lullaby record before, but I'd never made anything this personal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scarier, I think, than any other record I'd put out, because I didn't know what the reaction would be from my fan base or from my peers. And, thankfully a lot of other people found it moving. I think if I heard on paper somebody wrote a song about becoming a parent, I would probably throw up. So like I was, I'm the most skeptical of something like that of anyone. It sounds gross. But I'm happy that people find the songs moving. I find the songs moving, but I'm personally involved. So
sure.
But it's nice to know when things translate. I think that's a lot of what songwriting is about is, you make something that you like the hook of the melody, or you like the lyrics, or whatever, you like the storyline, but you don't know if anyone else is going to feel anything from it.
Right.
And when it works, it's really a satisfying feeling.
Yeah, and
people
validating when you get nominated for a Grammy for the record too, right? So when do you find out? Do you know? Or
well, they just moved the Grammys. It's all going to be virtual this year.
Yeah, and I heard they pushed it a couple months, right?
Yeah, they pushed it until March, so it'll be a while from now. And that'll be strange. I mean, that's part of the joy of it is getting to go there, and all the absurd things that you get to see. They do the initial awards, which include most of the categories, in a separate ceremony, for jazz record and alternative album and all these other things. And, they only announce a few of the big pop awards.
Sure.
Yeah. But even getting to see the show, it's pretty amazing to see the production live. And, I've had the good fortune of being at several of these, and some of the performances are just incredible to be in the room to watch. I mean,
yeah, the biggest names in music you're hanging out around. That's so crazy.
We were there when Kendrick Lamar performed twice, but one of the times when he performed, I don't know if you saw that one with the fire on stage. That was
yeah.
And we could feel the fire in the audience.
You could feel the flame.
And it was it was one of the most moving things I've ever seen in my life. And then just the pop, the whole thing, you just, whatever you may from afar catch the glimpse of Paul McCartney in the audience, or, Taylor Swift, or whatever it is. And it's like this weird feeling of I'm in this strange little genre. There's this is like this.
Yeah, but these people's kids,
event.
Their kids are probably listening to your records,
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, that's wild to think. Well, I hope you win, man. That would be so cool.
Something I did want to mention about this year's Grammy Awards is, unfortunately, all 5 nominees were white, and 3 of the nominees decided to rescind their nominations to show support for diverse voices and bring attention to this fact. And all 5 of the nominees support each other's decisions in terms of what they decided to do. Diversity is something I really care about, and I feel like diverse voices really need to be heard in something like children's music. So, kids are represented in various ways. And the way that I chose to do this is from working within the Recording Academy. I've been involved with increasing diversity in membership, and I know our leadership right now is really on top of this. We have Harvey Mason Jr. as the head of the organization, and Felicia Butterfield Jones as the diversity and inclusion officer. And they've been making great strides in this issue already. And I felt my voice was best served by remaining in the process and trying to change things from within the organization. And I just want to give a shout out if people are interested in hearing some different children's music with diverse voices. There's a wonderful radio show called We Nation Radio that's run by Devin Walker, and that would be a great place to start for people that want to hear the variety of children's music that's happening, because there's a lot of great records that came out this year, a lot of great records that came out last year, and I'm hoping in the future more of those voices will be recognized by the Recording Academy too.
That's amazing. With that though, I have a question. So you said there's 5 nominees in the category.
Yep.
And three people dropped out.
Yep.
Did they replace those 3 people with other artists? Like, how did that work?
They did not. I mean, I think because of the way the rules work, they're not allowed to replace people. So currently there are just 2 nominees that will be on the ballot. I mean, actually all 5 nominees were on the ballot, although the other 3 nominees encouraged people not to vote for them. But I think they have since been taken off the ballot because they rescinded their nominations after the announcement came out and after the ballots came out.
Oh, interesting. Was that the only category that happened in, or?
This year, yes, there was
Oh.
plenty of controversy, and as there always is in every category. But yeah, this was the only category that happened in. I will say that the Recording Academy, when this controversy first came up, they were very quick to respond, and in fact, immediately set up meetings with the heads of the organization and the people concerned. And they are actively trying to address these issues because they care about the same issues themselves. They want to make sure that our organization is diverse and inclusive. And so, but I think, they decided to drop out, and it did bring a lot more attention to the issue, which is great. More people finding out about diverse voices in the genre. So we're all friends and we're all happy with each other's decisions. And I think that's important to note. It's a good time for children's music because there is such a variety of music going on. I mean, it's one of the few genres that can be any genre. It's really just about the audience that it's directed towards.
Sure.
And a strange thing is, like, it's maybe most like gospel music or something like that, because gospel can literally be any form of music, but it has a certain subject matter. And children's music is also, it's got a certain audience in mind, kids and families. But otherwise, there are great hip hop records for kids, and there are great folk albums for kids, and jazz and everything else. So I encourage people to investigate all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you hope and think that'll change next year's Grammys? As far as the nominees go in that category?
I do hope it. I do have faith that it will change. One of the big things we're doing across the board at the Recording Academy is outreach to membership, because we want to increase the diversity of our members across the board, not just in children's music. And they recently formed the Black Music Coalition that is working on that, and they also partnered. I want to get sorry.
No worries. We can cut it so it's seamless.
Just want to make sure I got the organization right. That is what it's called, right? Yeah. And they also partnered with Color of Change to make sure that, the Recording Academy is hiring diverse people and working with diverse organizations in its business as well. So it's something that is deeply important to the organization as a whole. And I really do have faith that we will make it better. Getting people involved in the Recording Academy is something I care about, because I don't think a lot of people are aware that giving awards is something that happens one day of the year. And for 364 days of the year, the thing the Recording Academy is doing is advocating for musicians in DC to change laws. I testified in front of the Senate Judiciary on behalf of the Recording Academy to get the Music Modernization Act passed. It passed unanimously in the House and the Senate 2 years ago, I think it was. And during the crisis, the pandemic, Music Cares has been giving out millions of dollars to musicians in need, as they do every year. And they've also been advocating for unemployment insurance and other things and making sure self-employed people can get access to loans and things that musicians, we need those voices in DC advocating for us. And so, the Recording Academy does all these amazing things, and the Grammys are just the vehicle for that to happen. So
Mhm.
I'm hoping we can get a lot more people involved in membership and, diversify our membership and make our awards more equitable and fair, but also do all the other great things that we do in the Recording Academy.
How does somebody get involved with the Recording Academy? Is that like like a membership fee? Like how do you get in?
So yeah, you have to have a certain amount of recording credits. It's made up of creative musicians. We do have associate members that are more professional, professional members that aren't recording artists, but they're involved in the entertainment industry. They're not voting members. The voting members are all creatives. And so
okay.
in order to be a voting member, you have to have a certain number of credits and also career substantiation that you're, primarily a musician.
Mhm.
But you can, the way it works now is members nominate people to become members, and but anyone with a certain number of recording credits can apply.
Wow, that's interesting. And then you guys can, if you're in a category, like you're in a category this year, and
Yep.
are you able to vote in other categories or no?
Yeah, currently people can vote in a certain number of categories, a limited number of categories. One of the things that we're trying to work towards is having it be a little bit more of a qualified voting situation where people are more encouraged to vote only within their own categories. Because it is a peer voted award. And I think that's an important part of what makes the Grammys so unique.
Mhm.
It's not about who sold the most records or who had the most publicity or any of those things. It's actually about the peers within your genre appreciating what you do. And so I think the more concentrated that is, the fairer the voting would be.
Mm-hmm. I do respect that for the Grammys, because like bands like the Arcade Fire won that one year, and
Yeah.
people are like, album of the year, like who is the a lot of people didn't even know who they were.
Yep.
And it's
Yeah.
because the record was so good, and everybody that voted within the Academy that works in the industry knew that was an amazing album.
Yep. And I think every year everyone is a little frustrated with what happens, because it's a crazy thing to try to vote for what's the best music. But like, there's been little moments for me, like when I saw Mavis Staples win her Grammy Award, and I was there, and I was like, just as a Chicagoan, and like that just like made me so happy. And like, there's certainly tons of frustrations when like an album that I love doesn't get recognized by the Recording Academy. But every once in a while, there's one where you're like, yes, I'm so glad that got nominated or that won. Like, it's a silly business judging music anyway, but
right. Judging other people's art.
Exactly. Yeah. But but I did want to bring up all that stuff, and I do really support the three folks who made that decision. And I think we're all working together and all talking about ways to change it so it will be better in the future.
I have one more question for you, Justin, before
Sure.
I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
In kids music or in general, or
in general?
Yeah. I think when it comes to songwriting for me, and this isn't true of songwriting because I think for some people, collaborating in songwriting is what they thrive off, and I love seeing that. I'm a big fan of Dan Wilson, who's from the band Semisonic, but he also has written a bunch of hits with other people, and he writes a lot about songwriting, and I love to hear his discussions of collaborating, because it's fascinating to see all the people he's worked with and get to know what that sort of experience is like. But for me, like, songwriting is something I do in solitude, and eventually collaborate with my band and my producer and other people when I get to the recording phase. But I would say for aspiring artists, and this is something I tell myself every day, is don't be afraid of writing things don't let your critic get in the way when you're writing, and write bad songs and finish them and go on to the next one, because it is this process of, there's this book called, oh my gosh, I'll have to think of it, but it's Art and Fear. That's what it's called.
Mhm.
And they have this story of this clay potter teacher who assigned half of his class to make the greatest clay pot they could ever make, and half of his class to make as many clay pots as they could make. And they would be graded on the number of clay pots in one group and the quality of the work in the other. And they found the people who had to make as many as possible had the highest quality work. So the people who are shooting for perfection all the time, or only perfection, just struggled and it didn't work. But like the ones who were just making and making and making and making, every once in a while there was one thing that was more of a perfect clay pot. And so I think that's a lesson I would send to anyone who's writing songs and trying to make music.
I love that, because I've heard the answer, write as many songs you can, write the worst song. If it's the worst song, keep going. But I've never heard an explanation of why that's a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, if I was an aspiring artist and I was writing a bunch of songs that are terrible, it's like, well, this isn't going to work. But like you said, like if you're making more and more and more, that's super fascinating to have.
And that book's amazing. It's more about visual art than music, but it applies very much to the creative process. I think I've read it.